pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for our nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Notice of this meeting has been provided to local Valley News, provided in print and Trentonian, and posted on the borough website, on the Open Public Meetings Act. Roll.
Mayor Kennedy. Mr. Buda. Ms. Baxter. Here. Mr. Donaldson.
Here.
Ms. Lyon. Here. Ms. Perry.
Here.
Mr. Young.
Here.
Ms. Coella. Here. Vice Chair Ms. Ferris. Here. And Chairman Mackel.
Here. Take a look at the minutes from the last meeting and, you know, if you have any changes, and if not, I will entertain a motion to approve. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Great. Next is the approval of vouchers. We've got 10 vouchers, is that right? Or did I just?
Yeah.
Sorry. I got a whole agenda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Do we have any certificates tonight?
No, sir.
Okay. In which case, I'm going to open the public hearing on application 2025-2, Hopewell 57 Urban Renewal Energy LLC. Christopher?
We choose.
Yes, please.
Where are we now? At our last meeting, we had,
Speak up just a little bit. Yeah,
No,
sorry.
the one mic.
You want it?
No.
Sure, of course.
Okay, so. Sure.
No, you're good. You're fine.
Okay, on loud. Forget, okay. So we're at the deliberation part of our process and procedure. This is really where the board has, its members have an opportunity to argue, to discuss the merits of the application, and, reason for either granting or denying the application. The board has heard the testimony of the applicant, heard from the community group, and the exhibits from the applicant and from the community. Now it's basically time for us to look at these and to, further review and discuss the evidence that was part of the application. To provide some guidance, I thought it would be helpful to look at one of the trees for the New Jersey zoning amendments, called New Jersey Zoning and Land Use Administration treaty. Rather than give you my own language, I thought I just go right into one of the, this section of the decisional process. Focusing on how the decision is based on the evidence in the record. The decision must be based on the evidence. First, it should be remembered that each case must be decided strictly on the basis of the facts, at least at the hearing, viewed in light of the statutory requirement.
Can you speak loud? And we don't know what you're quoting, please identify what you're quoting.
Yeah.
The 2026 edition, New Jersey Zoning and Land Use Administration. Hence, the number, okay, so it's saying, the last I read was the facts adjudicated at the hearing viewed in light of the statutory requirements. And then it cites Kramer, Hence, the number of objectors present or the number of proponents or even the fact that no objections at all are voiced is of slight importance. Decision-making is not a matter of headcounting. The board is a quasi-judicial body whose function is to apply the facts adduced at the hearing to the legal requirements of the statute and ordinance and to decide on the basis whether the requested relief can be legally granted or not. The treatise goes on to talk about legal rights of both the applicant and objectors. It talks about how the board acts. It must act in an authorized manner, or it could result in considerable expense to the aggrieved party and the municipality itself. If the record's not clear and the basis for the decision is not clearly set forth. So for example, if the board denies the site plan without a valid justification, on appeal, the court could reverse the decision without any conditions. So you could have a site plan approved by a court with no conditions and at considerable expense to the municipality if there is no basis for the site plan to be denied. Ultimately, the board is to make a decision based on the record and adopt the resolution. As you all know, adopt the resolution for that decision. The resolution will outline the basis and reasons supporting your decision this evening. It will reflect the deliberative and specific findings of fact to sustain the board's conclusions. And that's really what we're here to do about worrying about tonight. The board heard numerous comments from the community, some comments that could lead to potential conditions to discuss tonight and as part of our deliberation. Others have urged the board to just deny the application outright. And the board has a decision to either approve or deny, but if you have the approval or denial, it has to be based and justified. So the denial can't just be a denial because unless you specify justification for that denial. And I thought this was a good opportunity again, take a look at the treatise and quote again a section because as you know, we have a fully conforming site plan in terms of the ordinance and the applicant has not requested variances. So under section 23-10 of the New Jersey Zoning and Land Use Administration book, there's a section called justification for denial. I'm just going to read a little bit here. A planning board's authority in reviewing an application for site plan approval is limited to determining whether the development plan conforms with the zoning ordinance and the applicable provisions of the site plan ordinance. Now, you should read it. There's a couple of cases cited. I'm not going to go through the cases. References to the statute makes it clear that the object of the site plan review is to assure that the site will be used in accordance with the regulations of site plan ordinance, which are designed to effectuate, and it cites 40, 55B, 38, 39, and 41. These statutory provisions all relate to on-site considerations, and since the use is, when a site plan is being considered by the planning board, always a permitted use, in most cases, the board must grant the site plan approval and where appropriate waivers, exceptions from the ordinance. The denial, and again, I'm still quoting from the book, the denial of the site plan would therefore be a drastic action and one which would have to find authorization in the statute, and it cites to the Shim Washington case. For example, gives a couple of examples where denial is actually permitted, based on the statutes. For example, if it appears that no adequate water supply existed for a particular tract, a site plan could be denied on that basis. Or where in addition to is proposed to be constructed to an existing hospital in such a way that it would make it impossible for the fire department to reach the upper floors with its aerial ladder trucks. This obviously impinges upon public safety and would likewise also support a denial. Fire safety is a factor which may be considered by municipal agencies, so that's something that is for consider talk about that side. There are also some other limitations where the board, if the applicant, if the board requires certain information within the ordinance and the applicant rather doesn't provide that information, that can also be a basis.
Oh.
It goes on, and I'm not gonna go too much longer, but I just want to kind of give you a feel for the case law, because I think it's gonna be relevant as we go through our deliberations this evening, of some examples of where courts have found the denial has not been justified. The planning board, and I'm quoting from section 23-10B, New Jersey zoning and land use administration, where denial not justified. A planning board has no authority to deny a site plan based on its view that a use permitted under the zoning ordinance is inconsistent with the principles of sound zoning. And it cites Wawa Food, and then it cites where the court states directly, while site plan review gives the board wide discretion to assure compliance with the objectives and requirements of the site plan ordinance, it was never intended to include the legislative or quasi-judicial power to prohibit or permit use. So essentially, as I stated when we started this, the board here has a very limited role. We're not the legislative, but don't create the rules. We're not here to determine if the use is appropriate or not. We're just here to determine if the use complies with the zoning ordinance that is in place. Similarly, you're not here to evaluate the appropriateness of any of the bulk standards. You know, we're not here to set height limits or density, size, number of park spaces. That all has already been decided by the governing body and made part of the applicable ordinance. The board does have authority, as you know from the years working here, for many of you, to put together conditions that, and they need to be lawful conditions, but to implement appropriate conditions and restrictions to address concerns and to minimize impacts that the development may have or the site plan may have to the community. I have some other cases here and I can go through. I think I already talked about Dunkin' Donuts where the traffic is not, there's no authority to deny an application because of off-site traffic conditions where the court stated the authority to prohibit or limit uses generating traffic into already congested streets or streets with a high rate of accidents is an exercise of the zoning power vested in the municipal governing body. So even though we're looking at traffic reports, our job's not to evaluate, or deny an application based on off-site conditions. We look at off-site conditions to see if at intersections, and particularly if there's any type of improvements needed. And even at that case, applicant would only be required to look at a pro rata share. And we've gone through and we had our traffic expert and their traffic expert talk about the numbers, and none of them rose to the amount of needing intersection improvements. There are cases, and I mentioned this earlier in one of the hearings, where you could deny an application if there is unsafe conditions on the site itself. So if ingress and egress is dangerous, I think I gave the example, if they had a driveway going into the intersection of the two roads, that would be a basis for denial. But off-site traffic conditions is not. There's one other case, maybe I could just Stock Shelf Court determined that the board there could not deny approval on the basis that the proposed development made too intense a use of the site as long as the project was a permitted use, did not exceed coverage, FAR, or bulk requirements. Furthermore, the court found that they could not deny approval based on the impact of the proposed of the project to a pond or wetlands on the site because jurisdiction over the impact was exclusively in the GDP purview, Freshwater Wetlands Protection Act. And then the court also looked at historic character of the site and said that wasn't inappropriate either because it was ultra virus, absent authorizing ordinances. Here we actually do have an ordinance that addresses historic zones, historic buffers, so we can apply those ordinances. In that case, they didn't have it and tried to apply those type of measures. Again, these examples focus on and help to focus tonight the board's
zoning ordinance. I don't know if the board has any questions, but that sort of kind of gives you the outline of what you're tasked to handle tonight.
Yeah.
Earlier in the process, Christopher, we had an opportunity when we were having our earlier hearings. We did ask the applicant to make some small changes to the application to which they agreed. And if we could just remind ourselves of what they are, because they're part of our deliberations. I know you note them.
Jump.
Oh, I jumped. Okay, sorry.
This is questions about the.
Yeah, I was just kind of, so in the normal course, what would happen is I will outline conditions or talking points for the board to discuss. So for example, I would say if the board grants the site plan, one of the conditions is that it would be required to comply with all the staff requirements. Or I will say, somebody in the audience talked about glass and birds and protecting them. Is there a condition that and the applicant, I think, said that they'll look at stickers or something, that could become a condition. So as we go through the deliberations, I made a list to help guide us. It's certainly not exclusive, so if the board members come up with something else that they want to discuss, talk about, that's fine. But I at least have a list of, I don't know, maybe 30 or so.
Okay.
During the deliberation,
Actually, it's 46.
during our deliberation, can we ask the applicant additional questions, or
Well,
is that over?
We can ask the applicant to clarify the testimony, you know, like, for example, if we are talking about number of parking spaces and we think it's 21 or 22, we could say, can you clarify the record and let us know if you had 21 in this area? You know?
Yeah, okay.
Can we ask our official
Sure.
question? And
Yeah.
our engineer.
Yeah, to clarify what we talked about and yes.
Go on, keep going. No, I have a more general question. Which, I'm sorry if I belabor this. I am confused about what we are using as criteria for judging. In the redevelopment plan, it says, planning board, criteria for the consideration and approval of the site plan shall be in conformance with the requirements of this redevelopment plan, the site plan provisions of the Hopewell zoning ordinance, and the executed redevelopment agreement. So in my mind, that's three things that we have to keep in mind, not simply the ordinance.
So you're correct, there are, and I talk loud, so if anybody can't hear me, let me know. So there are three documents that we're considering. Your main document is the zoning ordinance, right?
Right,
The second document is the redevelopment plan.
right.
Now, the redevelopment plan has a lot of things in it. Some are for the planning board,
Right.
some are for the council, some are for outside agencies, some is for affordable housing. So not everything in that redevelopment plan is for the planning board. So you're looking at that narrow focus under site plan.
Right.
And really what that redevelopment plan is telling you for what's under the planning board's purview is saying, we would like you to look at this. You may request for, you know, these additional items, because typically there are items that under general zoning, the planning board's not allowed to ask. So this opens up some additional information that the planning board could ask for that,
Okay.
because it's a separate entity. So
It's because with this, that opens, I mean, the redevelopers agreement involves the school impact study, the
Right.
emergency services.
So the redevelopers agreement is your third document.
Right.
There are a couple specific things that the planning board's looking at in that, but in general, that's a contract between the borough and the redeveloper.
Right, but it does require certain things of the redeveloper
Yes,
in the site.
to submit as part of their site plan
Exactly.
application.
Yep.
Not necessarily things that the planning board evaluates as part of their deliberation.
That
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
So, so say we talked about school age children,
Okay,
right? So the council wanted to see some sort of report on
right,
school age, so they
Right.
put that in there.
right,
They submitted that as part of their application packet,
right.
but the planning board, their community impacts, we consider those community impacts that you're considering, but they're not part of your decision-making process. You can't approve or deny an application based on the number of school age children. There's
Oh, no,
additional
no, no,
cases
no.
for that,
But-
right?
And take into consideration the school study impact, the impact study.
Well, you're looking at it, but you can't make your decision based on it.
It's not
It's
relevant.
not
to
relevant
the
to
planning
site plan.
board's jurisdiction over the site plan. Because in other words, if the site plan ordinance said something about school age in the ordinance itself, that would give us jurisdiction to review it and apply standards. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Because redevelopment's a little bit of a different animal, right? We're not just strictly looking at zoning in a traditional sense, like when we see a typical site plan application come to us. This has already been identified as a unique property. It was identified as an area needed redevelopment, and that opened up a separate sort of zoning option. That is hard because it's council, it's the planning board, it's a mix of things, but for the planning board's jurisdiction,
okay,
what you can look at, it hasn't really changed that much.
so what we can look at is the application.
Yes.
And the application is all the materials and all the testimony and all the exhibits up to what date?
Up until the last hearing.
Up until, okay, does that include
Just to dumb it down for a second.
Yeah.
if I may. When do we put in our recommendations? If you, forgive me if I'm asking you to repeat anything, because I think we all have our list of anything to throw back.
Mhm.
So when do we do that? Per topic?
yeah,
Yeah.
well,
So we're
like I
not
said,
going
I have a
back?
list. If it comes up in the list, talk about it at that time, because that's gonna be our deliberation on that topic. And if I get to the end of my list and there's nothing left, and then you have something else, bring it up then.
So all of that will be notated to send to,
As a condition of approval.
Well,
as a condition.
the board would look at it and determine whether or not it's appropriate for a condition of approval. And if it decides to make it a condition and part of the vote, then it would become, if it's approved with conditions, that would be a lawful condition that the applicant would have to comply.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we get to the end and we didn't say something you wanted to know, just
Okay.
let her.
Sure, we can go through, we can start talking.
Good to start.
So a few of these are general conditions that I put in all of the resolutions. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't.
I can give you a lesson.
I know. I could try shine by my voice, I think I'm gonna lose it. Okay, some of these conditions are stuff that you would see in all of our resolutions, and I put some protections in there, bootstraps that basically apply across the board. The first one is one that you'll see in all resolutions. It's the applicant shall comply with the conditions and requirements articulated in the professional report issued in connection with this matter, subject to changes with the record or in the resolution itself. So that's sort of a catch-all. We have a lot of reports. There's a lot of comments that our staff has made. We want to make sure that none of them get lost. So as part of, if this was a condition as part of compliance later on, they would have to go through and show that they met all of those conditions.
So just to clarify, anything that was in Candace's report, for example,
Automatically
is
is part.
automatically consolidated into whatever we vote on.
Correct.
And they have agreed by virtue of us sitting here that they will comply with those.
Correct. They agreed on the record before, but, it's also going to be part of the resolution.
Correct.
And if it's adopted and they don't agree, they could appeal it. That's their only option. Okay. The applicant shall comply with this one is sort of a repeat, but I just wanted to make sure it was clear that they'll comply with the conditions of the fire safety review letter dated March 21st, 2026, as articulated by the fire official in satisfaction of the fire official and borough engineer, subject to changes of the record or in this resolution. So I wanted to have that as sort of a separate condition. The applicant must comply with all representations made either personally or through any representatives during the course of the presentation to the board and in all documents filed with the application. So that sort of catches the stuff that we may not pick up right now. The applicant shall submit revised site plans that reflect the testimony and exhibits offered to the board during the hearing. The revised site plan shall address completeness review submission waivers that were temporarily granted. All professional report issues in connection with the matter. So when it said change the pipe, the site plan has to be revised to change that pipe size. The revised plan shall be subject to the review and approval of the appropriate borough professionals and consultants. And then I started to list out some of the things I was thinking about if they're not already done. The plan shall be updated to include environmental constraints, including flood hazard area, wetlands buffers, and all similar regulatory boundaries, if they haven't already been on the plan. Permeable paver areas, the redesigned entrance courtyard, I think they showed us an exhibit. I think there's some street intersection improvements since and we'll get to this in a little bit. The circle, our consultants believe that the circle wouldn't work as safely and for pedestrians and bikes as four-stop design. So those are the type of things that and we can add to that list. I'm just gonna put that out there. Any questions from the board? Okay. The next.
When you say we're gonna add.
Oh, as we go through tonight, if there's anything we specific, I've already
You need to
been in
listen.
catch-all, but if there's something specifically we wanna add to it, we could. You know, like if there's a specific feature that was talked about that you wanna make sure it's in here and it's not part of another condition and it should be on the revised plan, maybe as a note or something, I can add that.
Including recommendations to the council.
Yeah.
Can't hear you.
He asked about recommendations to the council. That's correct. So if there's something, we'll discuss if there's any recommendations we want to make to the council. And then that could be either part of the resolution or, you know, if it's something we're gonna recommend, we can do it directly. We don't have to put it in the resolution. So this is sort of our standard, slightly revised stormwater management, condition. Applicant shall revise stormwater designed to provide green infrastructure and to comply with state and local regulations. I believe the updated plans have green infrastructure in it, but it's still evolving because there's some things that, you know, are not. There's some state permits that they haven't secured yet. Final design to be reviewed and approved by the borough engineer. Applicant shall record the the borough approved stormwater operation and maintenance manual. So there's a manual on how you take care of everything, what you have to do. If you have permeable pavers, you gotta vacuum them out, how many times a year. That all goes into the manual and gets recorded. And then, the owner and any future owners have to comply with those requirements. And there's an annual reporting of April 1st of each year to the borough engineer that's required. Although it's addressed in the first comment, all of the stormwater comments in Kansas's May report. There's May, right? May 20, yeah, the 20th report could be included in this or are included in the first one. EV parking, applicants shall comply fully with state regulations regarding EV parking spaces. The proposed 26 spaces shall be dispersed throughout the project site, which is something that I think we talked about. On both tax lots to be reviewed and approved by the borough engineer and the, construction officer. And 5% of the EV spaces shall be ADA compliant. By the way, if you guys, if I miss any of that, as you know, this is, proposed as a single track. So I have a condition that the subject property, block 18, lot 1 and block 12, lot 7 shall function as a single parcel and may not be held under separate ownership or sold independently. Applicant shall file a deed restriction / notice indicating that the 2 tax lots must remain under common ownership and can be sold independently of one another. Prior to the recording of the deed restriction notice, it will be reviewed and approved by borough council.
And that's the block.
That's the
Across the
parking lot.
street.
Yeah, because this is a tract developed as a single parcel.
I just wanted to clarify that.
I want a record in the chain title so that there's no confusion. Anybody wants to buy the parking lot, they can.
Right.
So there'll be a deed notice that restricts it, but make sure it functions as a single tract or lot. Rooftop screening, applicant shall be, I think this was just that applicant, as applicant testified, it should comply with the flat roof standards where, and we'll note on the plans that the rooftop equipment and ground mounted utilities will be screened from viewing from public streets and adjacent residential properties. I think there was testimony to that fact, but I just kept it in as a condition anyway. More importantly, there was a revision and then a further revision. The applicant has eliminated the deck, roof, and rooftop activities from the plan. The roof will not be used as a recreation area or as an amenity to the occupants. Elevator, rooftop access, I think somebody from the public will be for maintenance only. I think somebody from the public brought that up. I thought that would be something that the board would want to discuss as a condition. And by the way, if you want to discuss it, we can. You just, I'm throwing these out.
It's good to sort of get it all out.
Yeah.
Partly we just remember what we've already done.
Keep rolling,
Keep
guys.
rolling.
Yeah.
But I can get a drink in between.
Bigotry.
Okay. That was rooftop activities. And the elevator, again, for maintenance only. There were a number, and this was one that I'm not sure what the board wants to discuss here, because it kind of goes sort of on the border outside of our jurisdiction. There was one of the cases, I don't think I read it to you, where, the court said, you can't deny an application based on like architectural unless, architectural reasons, unless it's specifically provided for in the ordinance. So, the design here had some specifications. There's been a number of questions raised by people in the public, in the community, about porches size, but whenever that's one topic. But whenever you increase that size, then your landscape buffer may get smaller and you're talking more redesign than, anything. But there's no condition there, but it was something that I just want to mention that was brought up and, courtyard entry points, I believe was raised by someone else. But again, we're voting on the application that the applicant brings before us and whether or not that meets the standards. We can look at conditions here to minimize impacts, but there's only so far we can go. Landscaping, I think this comment came from somebody in the public. Applicant, when planting trees, applicant shall remove the burlap sack around the tree roots to maximize growth unless the arborist provides different instructions. I added the arborist because, I want the borough arborist to weigh in if necessary. I think we have in our condition that the landscaping will be native, non-invasive species. I don't know if there was any additional trees that we talked about except for around the trash, which I'll get to in a little bit. Street trees will be, any in bad condition or damaged will be replaced. And the trees and tree replacements shall be reviewed and approved by the borough, the planner and engineer.
Can you pause there for a second?
Sure.
To that point, can we just get an inventory of the current trees on the site? And then based on that, we can determine whether they're need to come down or not come down, or the arborist will decide if they're healthy, if they're not healthy. I mean, how do we know? How do we know?
We're talking specifically about this, because the landscape plan had the plantings around the buildings. Yeah. We're talking specifically.
Street
The
trees.
street.
Yeah, I think, so, I think the condition, put together would be, something like applicant will provide an inventory of the street trees and their condition.
Right, for the borough arborist to
For the,
review and determine the health.
but more importantly, because of even after construction, we have to go back and review the condition of it. And then if they're in poor condition, they would be replaced by the,
Yes. Good ahead, Christopher, thank you.
The next topic was the vapor intrusion. We heard some testimony on that, and I just put it as a condition. The vapor intrusion protocols as described by the applicant and further detailed in the redevelopment agreement shall be provided in all of the buildings proposed on the subject property. Although it's really covered in the redevelopment agreement, like you were saying, and more of a construction protocol, we could make reference that they would comply with the construction safety protocols, detailed in the redevelopment agreement. Doesn't hurt.
No.
Is there, yeah, but, I'm sorry. Is there, and maybe you're gonna get to it, but on the demo, there are state regulations that they have to, or DEP and state regulations they have to confirm. So maybe you reference that as a condition that they have to comply with the state and DEP regulations on the demo.
I have a general condition.
Okay, all right.
And I didn't get it.
And the state is responsible, will guarantee that if the bottom falls out for some reason financially.
The state reviews.
Bond or something like that.
No, the state will review what is being proposed. And the state and also the construction office during construction will make sure that all of the safety protocols are being complied with. So they're not doing something like, like there's things like you have to take and water down areas so that the dry dust doesn't go into the air. You have to apply water on, dirt. Those things are enforced through other departments. It's really not something we get into, but that's something they'll have to comply with either way. And it falls under my control, that they'll have to comply with all rules, regulations, and stuff. Signage, the plan shall be updated to provide the specifics on the modified sign, remember it was changed, including its size, materials, surrounding elements, illumination and location to confirm compliance with the sign detail standards. So they're required to comply with standards, we just want the details on the final plan.
So maybe we can just discuss that point with the board, because there's no sign for any residential property in the borough that I can think of. Why do we need a sign? But, I mean, we can talk about that but we'll park that and keep going.
Or do we have the exhibit that shows the sign, we can look at it, is that what you wanna do, or do you
Well,
want?
I have a sign at all.
See, Bob's got a different take on it than I.
Bob's not
I-
gonna sign.
Yes.
But you're going to say, and then get into the various.
Okay.
Details.
Okay, no, I mean, the whole, this is your deliberation, your discussion. I'm just here to guide.
Like the lighting ordinance, so I can find the dark sky, that was so long ago, that I don't even remember it, so I want you to put that. Right, I wanted to be able to say that's part of the quote.
That's number 27. All right, we're at 14. Garbage collection and recycling. Again, it appears they comply. Applicants' enclosure screening shall comply with the site plan design standards for garbage disposal provisions and aesthetics. As indicated in the testimony provided, the applicant will make all necessary arrangements to handle the pickup, removal, and disposal of all garbage, waste, refuse, and recycling generated by the use on the subject property. It's applicant's responsibility to ensure that all garbage, waste, refuse, and recycling is properly removed from the subject property so that there's no overflow of any cans, bins, or receptacles. I don't know if, in our ordinance, we have time limits for pickup, but, we could also add collection will not occur in the evenings, like after a certain time or before a certain time, but, that's usually.
I believe the testimony was collection shall occur during regular business hours.
Okay. That's actually what I wrote. Okay, next topic is the crosswalk to the parking. So to connect the lots, applicant shall add a crosswalk to the site plan for pedestrian crossing from the residential units to the parking lot across the Somerset Street. The marked pedestrian crossing is specific location and accompanying signage, which is like the stop here for pedestrian sign, shall be reviewed and approved by the borough engineer. And I think the applicant, are we saying the applicant should also construct a curb ramp on both sides?
Yes,
Okay, for safety purposes.
well, if you have a crosswalk.
You don't want people triggered. Okay. So that's what I have on the crosswalk. Site triangles at driveway location, site lines will be adjusted, removing obstructions to the satisfaction of the borough engineer. And again, a lot of these may have been done and are shown on the plan. I always like to I'm always of the more cautious approach to have it in there, because if there's an issue later, it's very good to have things written down. Sidewalks in general, applicants shall repair and replace as needed damaged or broken sidewalks, particularly around the intersection of Hamilton Avenue and Lafayette Avenue. This is around the site. Additionally, this should include providing sidewalks and curb ramps in compliance with NJDOT to provide crosswalks along the 4 approaches at the intersection of Hamilton Avenue and Lafayette Avenue. So this was the suggestion of our consultant to take out the circle. So I just wanted to to clarify that.
I do have a question on that. Sorry, just for clarification. So, since we're not responsible for determining whether it's a four-way stop or a circle, how does that condition work?
Yeah, I'll read what the language I suggested, and then you could let me know if you want to amend it or change it.
Okay.
This was just purely sidewalks, although it kind of. Or some objectors, somebody, I don't say objector, but community member really had referenced some potential for sidewalks or stop signs in other locations, but it was off-site. It wasn't really clear to me what they were identifying. It may be, if it's off-site, it may be more appropriate, like for a stop sign, for something like that to be reviewed by Borough Council. But I just noted it here if someone wants to have that discussion. ADA, I always have a condition, applicants shall comply with all accessible parking requirements. And then I usually list out what the numbers are. I don't have them in front of me right now. Now we get to the mini circle roundabout. So this is how I just first shot at drafting the language, and we could talk about it, if it works or doesn't. Applicant shall amend the site plan to remove the proposed mini roundabout. In its place, the applicant will construct the following improvements. Number one, a four-way stop intersection at Lafayette Street and Hamilton Avenue. Number two, 4 crosswalks, 1 for each leg of the intersection. Number 3, new curb ramps connecting the sides of the crosswalk along Hamilton and Lafayette sidewalk. And 4, an extension of the sidewalk within the right of way along Lafayette Street on the south side from the proposed new landing to the existing sidewalk. So that they were going to make that connection, and the applicant had agreed to that extension. Additional improvements include ensuring that the existing curb ramps conform to current industrial standards, final design to be reviewed and approved by borough engineer.
Instead of industrial, it should be industry.
Industry, it says industry, I said industry, current industry standards. Still got that, Jeff, I guess. The board recognizes that adding a four-way stop will require a formal request to the borough based on warrant analysis to be prepared by applicant in consultation with the borough engineer. If approval is not granted, applicant shall update their plans to convert the four-way stop back to a two-way stop, keeping in place the other proposed improvements. And in parentheses, I say the 4 crosswalks, associated curb ramps, and sidewalk extension, subject to the review and approval of the borough engineer. So basically, if the borough council does not like a 4-way stop intersection, it becomes a 2, but you still have the safety protocols, updates, enhancements, I should say, about the curb cuts and the crosswalks. Any discussion on that? Want to take a turn?
No, I think that covers it. I was wondering how you were gonna do that, so. Thank you.
Applicant shall adhere to the NJDOT guidelines and the manual on uniform traffic control devices. Applicant shall install a no outlet dead end sign on Somerset Street. Was that something? I wrote that down. Okay. The applicant should identify pedestrian priority treatments at key crossings, materials marking, raised crossings, refuge areas as a planning compatibility enhancement, even if not strictly required. And I guess that's going to be reviewed and approved by the borough engineer. Trash enclosures. Next topic. Applicant shall add additional evergreen trees to better screen the trash enclosure on lot 1, this is the residential side, to the satisfaction of the borough planner and engineer. I think I'm gonna skip and then come back. The next, I'll just go. The next topic was just the number of parking spaces, which by now everybody should be totally confused because we've heard just about everything that you could on this topic. I think we had, one of the objector experts suggested the removal of 21 street parking spaces, another person suggesting removing it from along one side, limiting parking to one side of the street, providing additional parking behind the townhouse units, locating them so they don't interfere with driveways. You basically heard arguments that you need more parking and that you need less parking. And removal of the street parking. The plan for us is fully conforming with the ordinance and with the redevelopment agreement. I don't know if it's those requirements. I don't know if the board wants to talk about that. A lot of the issues of, whether parking would be allowed during day, during night, one side, other side is really something that would be reviewed and approved by the borough council. So that's really not where we are. Our plan that we're seeing from this applicant shows parking alongside the development on their side of the street, which was anticipated for in the redevelopment agreement and provided for, which talked about even satisfying parking requirement for 10% on the street parking. So that's where we are on that.
So that's not really a condition there yet.
No, I just provided that as a discussion point for this board. You know, just to kind of talk about everything that was talked about. Parking lot, screening lot 7. On lot 7, I think, a fence shall be added along the western property line to block headlights from the parking lot. The fence shall be solid and the location is intended to buffer areas. And the intended buffer areas shall be reviewed and approved by the borough engineer. Lot 7 shall comply with the 10-foot landscape buffer requirement along the remaining perimeter of the property line and shall maintain grass landscape islands with mature trees. Any dead or dying trees shall be replaced by applicant prior to the final certificate of occupancy. Also in that lot, we talked about the stacked parking spots proposed on the inner row of spaces along the left side of the first driveway of lot 7 to be restricted to units that have no more than to be restricted to units that have more than one car, which are usually units that have more than one bedroom as well. Next is, is lighting. So this is how I initially put together some language on lighting. The updated lighting plan shall support a pedestrian scale village character and reduce impacts on nearby residents. This includes fixture shielding and lighting controls that reduce illumination after peak activity periods while maintaining safety. The approval is specifically conditioned on lighting being as low as possible without compromising safety. Lighting shall have dark sky compliant rating with downward directed LED fixtures. Applicant agreed to remove the upper building mounted lights on the apartment building. After close of business, which we didn't really decide what time that was, I'm not sure if that's their office business, or that the gym or that one building in the center. The lighting shall be substantially reduced. I think we came up with 50% or more, but it really depends on safety levels and requirements. To accommodate safety, only with motion sensors to activate the area if, when the area is being used. That's how I heard us discussing it, but again, we can tweak that.
I do have a question.
Mhm.
David Ackerman's report, was that entered as an exhibit?
I don't believe that I have that.
I don't think it was.
He said he was going to.
He dealt with the developer directly, the developer agreed that I
Okay,
never got.
none of it, that's not part of what we're.
I don't have that
never-
as an exhibit.
No.
No, but you are looking at the testimony provided, and that was that they were gonna be dark sky compliant, they were gonna do those things, so they did so much.
And the borough engineer will review for safety and determine the minimal limits. So that'll be done through the borough. In addition, the lighting shall have a color rating of 3,000 kelvins or lower. Okay. Historic Preservation Commission, applicant will comply with the recommendations of the Historic Preservation Commission as detailed in the testimony of Michael Mills and Exhibit B-1. So I'm just gonna pull in all his recommendations and just make it a condition. Affordable housing. The redevelopment plan requires a 20% set aside for affordable housing. And the applicant testified to this, but applicant must comply with the Uniform Housing Affordable Controls UHAC and shall make all necessary changes to meet requirements for a 20% set aside. The applicant shall provide a set aside number and demonstrate integration and parity on the record. In documents, this includes a table confirming the affordable unit count, bedroom mix, and distribution by building floor, as well as confirming that the affordable units are not visually distinguishable and have comparable access to entries, amenities, and common areas. Additionally, the zone requires that a borough designated administrator or borough approved third-party administrative agent and administrative costs paid by the developer with administrative costs paid by the developer. And then there's, I think there's 24 dwelling units in the apartment building. Will be qualified affordable. I think it's 4 one-bedroom, 15 two-bedroom, and 5 three-bedroom. To be confirmed.
Yes, and I think to add to that, the affordable housing ordinance that's adopted by Borough Council.
Any approval shall be conditioned on, this one I'm gonna address that, outside agency approvals. I have a more specified, more detailed paragraph later. Performance bond and maintenance guaranteed, all plantings and, buffers shall be maintained by the developer and maintenance guarantees provided to ensure that any dead or dying vegetation is replaced. All public improvements to be dedicated to the borough shall also be bonded in accordance with the MLUL. So basically, it's just saying wherever we're allowed to bond certain improvements like perimeter landscaping, they're required to do so. I mentioned this just because we talked about it, the environmental cleanup, LSRP. I didn't, it's really not something that the board tends to get into, but there could have a condition relating to providing reporting requirements. Although the borough in the redevelopers agreement probably has that handled, it's covered by the redevelopment agreement. There's also the environmental, requirements are all part of the demolition permit. And they're contractually obligated through the redevelopment agreement. But I just wasn't sure if there was some question or something the board wanted to have or to kind of build on there. I wouldn't think of that.
I have a note on it. The redevelopment plan says that we, the planning board, will hire an LSRP to provide comments to planning.
Right, so that, hang on. Hold on a second.
For demolition plan, environmental permits, and proposed environmental controls, and provide comments to the planning board.
When you look at that section, that's under the site plan review section of the redevelopment plan.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about. They may also provide additional information that we don't typically see as a planning board. And if they supply something that needs review by an LSRP, The redevelopment plan authorizes the planning board to retain an LSRP to review those reports, but since we didn't get those reports, since they're part of outside agency approval, we didn't have to retain an LSRP because we didn't have those reports to review. But it would have just authorized the planning board. Yeah, no,
Sorry to be a stick,
I know.
that's because you and I talked, but it says the planning board shall engage. Shall means must.
Right. If they submit under that bullet point list above a document that would require us to look, to have an LSRP.
So it's conditional on the bullet points.
Right.
That is not.
And
I have, for the record, I think it's really important that we, you know, do process very carefully and accurately and.
yeah, and an LSRP, when you're looking at the remediation plan, that's not, the planning board doesn't approve those, they don't have jurisdiction over those. But what the plan allowed us to do was if we got those reports in advance, we could authorize the planning board to be able to retain an LSRP, which we don't have currently under our process.
So that was condition.
Mhm.
This is a paragraph that I usually add. It's more of a general. The board has relied heavily on engineering and architectural plans and exhibits and testimony. The applicant's application has been approved based upon the exhibits and testimony presented. Thus, the applicant shall maintain the improvements and use their subject property in accordance with the testimony, exhibits, maps, and approved plans. This condition shall include applicant's obligation to clean up and maintain the parking area and property, and shall keep the premises in good condition and in compliance with the approval in perpetuity. It's just a control. The next one talks about entering into a developer's agreement in a form approved by the borough engineer and borough attorney. Such agreement shall, I can read the whole thing. I think, you know, if it becomes a condition and the board goes that way with the vote and the resolution, we can go through the specific language. But basically, you know, it addresses affordable housing. It addresses the developer's agreement would also address any type of performance guarantees. They would submit a cost estimate to the borough engineer for review. These are all typical things that would happen on development application. So. And then it says a pre-construction conference will be required prior to the start of construction. An as-built survey of both lots and of off-site improvements are required to be submitted to the borough engineer at the completion of construction. If anybody wants me to go into detail, I'll be happy to. Next one, I put here because you never know with developments what you see. I just have a general no outside storage is permitted on the subject property. We didn't see anything and you know, other than the garbage, you don't want to see things stored out there. This would not apply to construction, of course, but once it's operating. The next one, somebody from the public had raised the question of bird safety, and the applicant testified that the applicant will look into decals on some specific windows as needed. I don't know if the board wants to make that a condition or not, but that was something that was talked about, and that's how the applicant responded. Then some of this is actually, now we're basically into my general conditions that I apply. Submission of proof of payment for all real estate taxes. Escrow charges are current. The applicant shall pay additional professional review fees as determined by the borough together with any required engineering inspections. Next number, in accordance with the law, the site plan and resolution shall be enforceable in the Hopewell Borough Municipal Court in the event of any deviation or violation of its approval. Next one would be the applicant shall comply with all borough ordinances, rules and regulations that are applicable to this development. And is required to obtain all necessary permits, including but not limited to certificate of occupancy and construction permits. The grant of this application shall not be construed to reduce, modify, or eliminate any requirements of the state New Jersey Uniform Construction Code. And then the next one is the outside agencies. The within approval and the use of the subject property are subject to the review and approval of or letter of no interest from outside agencies, including Mercer County Planning Board, Mercer County Soil Conservation District, NJDEP Flood Hazard Area Freshwater Wetlands Permit, NJDEP Letter of Notification, Hopewell Borough Water and Sewer Department, NJDEP Treatment Works Approval for Sanitary Sewer, NJDEP Water Main Extension Permit if applicable, Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission Review Letter, and Hopewell Borough Floodplain Development Permit.
Christopher, it's American Water now, right? Or will be.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
American Water, what did I say?
Will be there.
Yes.
Or successor.
Yeah, of course. Okay, and
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, could we add the fire district as an outside agency? Well, so that way we know we have resolution compliance.
thank you.
Thank you.
Hopewell Borough Fire
Be
District,
Hopewell Township,
Hopewell Township,
fire marshal.
okay, fire marshal.
Thank you.
Thank you. The proposed development and all site improvements shall be constructed identically with that shown on the approved plans as signed by the board as to location, design, quantities, and quality, all of which shall be subject to the information contained here and field changes, if any, approved by the appropriate borough or borough professionals or both. Oh, sure.
It sounds as you said, a question I have, and this is maybe a matter of clarification. You said signed by the board, but should it not be signed by the applicant? Or am
I'm talking about the approved plans after compliance. So when the board chair signs the plan, that the proposed development and site improvements shall be constructed identically with that shown on the approved plans as signed by our board chair and Candace actually. As to the location, design, quantities, quality, all of which shall be subject to the information contained in here, the field changes, and any approval by appropriate borough or borough professionals or both. Next, the chairman and secretary of the shall not sign the site plan or other plans until all plans have been revised in accordance with this resolution. Any disputes concerning the satisfaction of any condition related to the resolution related to the revisions of the plans shall be brought to the board by written letter application by the applicant for board resolution of disputes without the necessity of public notice, but on written notice to the board engineer and board planner. This condition is based on satisfaction of the requisite criteria and standards for approval. So basically, there may be field changes or tweaks that happen. And this gives if the consultant reviewing, so for example, say our engineer is reviewing something that we designated a condition to be subject to their review and approval, but they're not comfortable with it. This gives the ability to get before the board quickly, so the board can weigh in on it. Okay, this is the catch-all with all the laws. The within approval and the use of the subject property are conditioned upon and made subject to any and all laws, ordinances, requirements, and or regulations and or by any and all municipal, county, state, or federal governments and their agencies and departments having jurisdiction over any aspect of the subject property or use of the subject property. In the event any inconsistencies between the terms and conditions of the written approval and any approvals required above, the terms and or conditions of the within approval shall prevail unless and until changes by the board upon proper application. So if they go out to an agency and the agency says you have to move this building here, they have to come back before you. Nothing contained in this resolution shall be construed as authorization or approval for the applicant to occupy the subject property prior to the issuance of final approvals, license, and permits by the borough and other agencies. In the event any government, this one I kind of say it a little clearer here. In the event any government or agencies having jurisdiction of the project requires material changes or modifications to the plan, such as, the applicant shall return to the board on an amended approval. No, I'm sorry. I had language in there that didn't make sense. It was a typo. I didn't read it. I'll read this again. In the event that any governmental agency having jurisdiction on this project requires material changes or modifications to the plan, the applicant shall return to the board on an amended approval. Next number, applicant shall comply with any conditions agreed upon during the hearing on this application, even if omitted from the resolution, which is pretty standard in law anyway, but I always like to spell that. I think, so that's what those were my standard ones, so you could kind of, broadly apply. So those are the topics and the conditions that I gleaned from the last hearings.
Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Hang on, Brett.
I'll sit down.
I have a few. I have a few questions, clarifications. On the affordable housing units, those are very low as well as low and moderate.
That's right. There's a specific mix that has to be
Okay.
abided by. It's written under the UHAC and our new affordable housing ordinance that we just adopted as part of our fair share plan.
Okay.
So those are already spelled out and those are also regulated by the state.
Because in the redevelopment plan, it just mentions low and moderate. I want to make sure they're very low.
Yeah. Yeah, they have to comply with all UHAC requirements.
Good. Okay. Okay, so as far as Candace's memo, did you receive a reply to your concerns about the stormwater?
So the comments that I presented, made, no, I have not received a response to that, but that's part of the process that, we go back and forth with the applicant's fiscal,
So that's ongoing.
yeah, because they are currently under review, by DEP for the stormwater design as well, besides only the flood hazard, disturbances, so there's a back and forth with that and I presented that listing to make sure that my comments were also included in any pending revisions that they would need to do for DEP.
So that's conditions of approval.
Yeah.
Part, comment she made in her. And we're talking about 100-year storm. That the receiving, that the stormwater receptacles are.
Yeah, so, stormwater design is a major development, so, the requirement by the state regulations is that they have to control the 100-year storm, future as well.
Okay, not just the 25 years. So you're comfortable that it will not, the development is planned will not result in an increased risk of flooding to neighboring.
It's not permitted. That's part of what the stormwater management rules are.
All right.
Can you repeat that, Candace?
You couldn't do for your last.
The stormwater management rules state stormwater management rules do not allow, for an increase of stormwater off the site. So it is the responsibility of the applicant to, provide the roots for that.
I think generally, we look at the resolution of approval or denial as sort of the be all end all, but as the planning board might recall, this is just like one step in the development process. There's a lot of stuff that continues to happen after any type of approval. And stormwater is definitely one of those that's very intensive and there's a lot of back and forth. But like things like the LSRP, I mean, the approval is not the end of the development process. There's still quite a bit that happens afterwards, which is standard. Because we have 95 days to act on an application. DEP can take as long as they want.
I know. I just want residents to be assured.
Right.
That they are cut, that we have their backs with respect to stormwater. And other, all right, I'm, somebody else.
You know what, can I just make a quick comment about the rooftop? I'm a little sad that there was pushback about the roof, and I just thought maybe to be considered at a future time, it's an additional exterior outlet for residents to be able to go to. And if there are elderly and disabled, it's probably easier for them to access than having to go to the first floor and outside. So I just wanted to put that out there, that maybe that should be reconsidered, if not right away, but for a future time.
I agree with that.
And to sweep the view and to appreciate Hopewell Borough, it feels like to me it would be more welcoming for new tenants.
And I think the testimony right now was that they're not contemplating it, they've removed it. But should an applicant, any developer decide that they want to, review that again, they would have to come before the board with an amended site plan. So there's always that option in the future if they want to look at that.
Yeah,
They
there
just
could be
have
a light, noise ordinance, children, there could be something.
Right, so right now,
Very much.
that's been removed.
Excuse me, if we wanted to move on it now, is that possible or not?
No, the testimony provided was that it was being.
Okay.
Take it out again.
Alright, so, yeah, we're low.
Does anybody?
Cause I'm allowed to talk.
I know,
Are you gonna,
No, go ahead.
yeah, no. Yep.
So where are we? Those items, we have the sign,
Yeah, I have a couple items I would.
and we have parking,
Right, we're.
We have parking.
we were talking about.
Porches. There's a truck.
Well, how about, would it be easier if we take these in categories? So if you want to talk about parking, let's look at all the parking things. If you want to talk about, architectural, we'll do that all at once. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Kind of, because they'll all flow together. Sure. So what do you want to start with?
Let's start with porches.
Porches.
Brad, I thought you were done.
I'm not.
You're making me dance.
We're gonna do all of grants for.
Yeah.
I know, but I don't want to dominate, but I've spent a lot of time looking at this and considering it, and I have concern. So the building design, now we're talking about. Hold on. Other provision, 12-14.6, which I think that's a typo. I think it should be 12-24.6. By the way. Building design. Design of the building shall respect the historic character of the neighborhood setting in the borough and shall conform to the following. And we have the following. There was a lot discussed about the porches. I brought it up. I think Dave Schimpfel, some other people brought it up. When I looked at porches are important, but, well, even Michael Mill said porches are an important element in Hopewell Borough. They help create, community. We have sitting porches for the most part, people sitting and rocking and talking and that kind of thing, not simple porticos. When I look at this, and I counted, 16 of the units have no porches. The end units on the 4 buildings. 10 units share a porch with the above or below on a 2 by 10 foot porch. In my mind, a 2 foot wide, it's a portico, it's not a porch. And 16 units share the above or below unit, share with the above or below unit of a 4 by 11 porch. So that's 16 out of the 42 that actually have usable sitting porch space, which I like porches. I think the applicant would like porches because what it does is it creates community. It helps integrate people into the community, which is what we'd like to have. And I just think it's really important. Any comments?
No, I agree, and that's the parking comes out, but I won't hop into that unless you want me to now. That town.
No, that's.
Just on the usability of the porches.
I can appreciate exactly what you're saying, except I also recognize that design is done is holistic. And it's difficult when you start thinking on those. You know, when you've done the design, it takes many items into consideration.
Yeah, I understand
We're
that.
asking for a redesign.
I thought that was the part of what we could request.
Yeah, we could request it.
Because it's,
I'm just saying,
I
that,
have
you know,
number.
it's, I get what you're saying, but it's also 100% that part of many other things.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. I brought it up during the hearings. Other people did. Michael Mills, I mean, he said that Hopewell is a town of porches and that porches was the main thing in the HBCs.
So I thought Michael Mills was a really useful participant in this process, and I know he interacted with the applicant, and there were a lot of changes based on his input and the Historic Preservation Commission. So I think at the end, when he was satisfied with their application, I'm inclined to go along with the Historic Preservation Commission kind of opinion on our, not our, yeah, for their perspective. So I'm not going to opine that it should be changed. I feel like
I disagree.
Okay.
That's what we have.
You want me to keep going on the town now?
No, we have to. Because Catherine doesn't.
Is there any other on architectural?
Well, what about the rear?
Yeah, go ahead.
What about?
Okay, because accessibility back to behavior. I'm just trying to be realistic about the townhomes, and I'm thinking those are gonna be very attractive to small young families. I know urban professionals, I see that too, but I'm trying to get an idea of how they will respond, and so I've been thinking about the parking and how, you know, a parent gets groceries in the house and, you know, just trying to envision what I've done in the past and what people living there will have to do. And that includes, you know, jumping up through the porch. And it is kind of a weird design in my mind, but I don't, you know, I'm not the architect, that there's no access in the back. And it even looks like living rooms are toward the back, but I could be reading, I'm not an architect, you know, I could be reading the drawings wrong. So my question, and this is where the whole parking thing is if there's not going to be assigned parking for the apartment outside of the secondary, what can we do for the townhomes? Can they be assigned in the back? You know, I realize it's an enforcement issue, but maybe just so they know they can park behind their place and they can access it via the sidewalks. I mean, I'm thinking about a child in the car and you're trying to drop off groceries and if I'm going too deep, just stop me. But, and then you've got to drive around to park that car, so, where's your child? And it's more in the public area. Like I've done that in a rural area where, nobody's around, but because you're on a public street, it's just a different scenario. So that I'm putting that out there. Is there a means to do something in that L cut of the townhomes where they can have assigned spots? If that can accommodate all of that. And and then doors, if that's doable, but that's a design element and that's something that we ask on to town council or whoever.
What would we,
Any other
what is our, where could we make a suggestion on that or past that point?
I'm reluctant about the assigned, parking, only because of the enforcement and because it's their property there. I understand, the reality is, people are gonna pull up in most townhomes, they're gonna pull up in the front, they're gonna park or double park, they're gonna take their groceries down. And, I mean, that's not, I don't know what we can do about that, that's.
What do you want parking on the street? There's enough room on property, not that parking on the street. Do you want parking on the street or not?
Well, we can leave parking on the street, it's just,
Okay.
and it could be nice if it is in front of their buildings, if they wanted to hop in, but to know that they have their own designated spot means they will not stay there.
We can't designate street park.
Yeah, there's no designated street park.
No, she's.
No.
Oh, in the
That
back.
own house on the interior.
And what we can do, because the board is, we can sort of do a straw vote of where the board is on particular issues, because, one person may be in favor or half of it or all, so as we go through these, we can talk a little bit more about that. And I think that you're talking about a recommendation that the applicant look at.
Yeah, at the very least, can the townhomes have
Yeah, and.
assigned parking? So they know.
I don't.
Park around the bend without a
Yeah,
bike.
I don't know what your testimony was earlier on that. Did you talk about permitting or no specific?
I think the testimony was a permit on the tandem spaces for lot 7.
Yeah,
But the EV parking is going to be interspersed, so you don't know if the spot right behind your unit, if it's an EV spot and you don't have an EV, you're not gonna park there anyway.
And I think they were across the way, I can look at it again, I don't remember what the EVs were, maybe you could like the EV mode.
That's what we thought, that's what I thought was decided. Initially, they were bunched in the center,
yeah.
and then. we
Subject to the
discussed-
review of the borough.
Yeah, we discussed it dispersement. So depending on whether you have anything or not, you're not gonna be.
Yeah, we need to be realistic about the EV users. You're right, okay. I think I said everything I need to say.
Do we wanna use your recommendation and kind of get a straw vote or a straw
I mean,
on these conditions that they're proposing?
yeah, the question is, as proposed, the applicant, once constructed, will be implementing a parking system, based on their experience. Once you start requiring certain designations, we don't know how that impacts the operation, so it could get a little tricky.
Yeah, okay.
And, you could also say somebody in the department with a small child, if all those are taken and they come early, why couldn't they park there and just walk their apartment? Why do they have to go across the street? So,
Well, I see that as an entirely different management system.
yeah, but it's all one property, all managed together, but.
Right, but I mean, for the tenant. And how they access.
So it's, it's something we can talk about, but I don't know if you want to take a straw poll, someone feels strongly about it, or if you want to leave it up to the applicant to implement their.
Let's see what they're saying.
Okay, so.
We take a 5 minute.
Sure. Take a 5 minute break.
Sure.
I just need a clarification from Christopher.
Sure.
The on-site storage, they're gonna be bike racks, like physical bike racks on site, because that's. I don't know, do you consider that storage or not?
I think we had testimony, I might have even asked it, like on the first meeting about bike racks, and I believe the applicant.
They said yes.
There will be bike racks.
So just,
So actually, I could, in that first paragraph that I said, or third, fourth paragraph, when I was talking about revisions to the plans, I'll also add the plan should be revised to show bike rack location.
yeah, my other. I know they reduced the size of the sign based on our recommendation. I'm just thinking that residential properties, even townhouses in the borough don't have a sign in front of them saying, you know, welcome to the sport park or whatever it is. Why do we need a sign? There's a street intersection, and then on the corner of Somerset and Hamilton, I'm in the development. Why do we have to name this?
So,
Why do we have a monument of what this is?
so it's a permitted accessory use.
Okay.
Right, so it's separate from our typical sign or.
Yes,
Now, the yard will also have a sign. The lumber yard will also have a sign, because that also was permitted in there.
the lumber yard might never get done.
Well,
Let's take that off the table.
So you can have a discussion about the sign or not, but they are permitted to have a sign.
Okay.
Up to 35 square feet shall conform to the requirements of section 1217A. So
And not necessarily for the people that live there, but you know, somebody said, hey, I live back this. And the people coming to the area, that this is somebody who's not familiar. But somebody that are. I mean, I'm just saying, that's what, you know, part of, you know, you don't have like necessarily street numbers or market numbers shown, so if they see a sign and then they know that. That's,
I just like that. No,
Yeah, I mean, you know, for individual houses, you got house numbers on houses. Now, if it's in the complex, you need to know that you're. Number.
Yeah, but look at what's on, I mean, there's a townhouse complex on Model Avenue. There's not a sign in front of that. There's house, there's numbers on, there's numbers.
Doesn't have a name.
Doesn't have a name.
No.
It's next to the lumber yard.
right,
Yeah,
right,
Doesn't have a
but it's
name.
linear along mile.
and
It's a
they're,
linear along mile.
It
and
doesn't have its own access drive.
Yeah,
No, it doesn't. Doesn't have its own name.
This also brings up the question of address. So I know there was testimony, packages are gonna be delivered to the community center and not on in front of individual doors. Will the addresses be on? What
Yeah, they'll have apartment address. I'm sure they'll have unit addresses. Yeah.
Okay,
For the townhouse.
For everything, will have- every unit will have its own number.
and will that be visible from the street?
Not from the street because you have to enter into the property in order to see some of the, especially for the.
Where will
well,
the,
the townhouses are around the edge.
Townhouses around the edge, but the apartment.
Building,
The apartment
right.
buildings, you
You're
don't.
probably gonna have to go into that in order to see the.
yeah, but the
Yeah, you're gonna have
townhouse,
Get to the building.
where will the unit numbers be located?
Is it shown on the architectural plans?
I didn't see it.
Where you have unit numbers on the doors facing the street,
And it's 19.
you'll have unit numbers facing the doors on the street.
Yeah.
Right, so they'll have unit numbers, every, you know,
There'll be numbers.
there'll be numbers according to the code. I mean, they're gonna have to have numbers identifying their unit when there's an exterior entrance.
It's
But
also
if they're on the
important.
outside, you know what, Alan,
Well,
you know what the.
You need to have identification on the outside for like emergency and fire access. You know, people need to know, emergency
Yeah.
people need to know where they're going.
Okay.
Do we need a monument sign? Let's take a.
So, can I?
Yes.
Yeah.
So typically when we have apartment complexes or buildings, fire and EMS is dispatched to that complex. Okay, so I know it's not an entertaining word, but, so we would be dispatched to 57 Hamilton Avenue apartments or whatever the ultimate name is going to be. Ambulance, EMS, police, fire, we're gonna be looking for that development. Bear in mind, it's not just the local fire and EMS companies that are necessarily responding to that. So everybody needs to be able to find it.
So your recommendation is that we should have a monument sign out front for emergency vehicle identification?
We should have something there
Okay.
that the property is identified. The townhomes, for example, across that face the street, right? They will have individual numbers and we're gonna be looking for, assuming how the numbering works, 123 Lafayette Street, right, or whatever. So that's a street address because it faces the street. When you're going to the apartment building in the back, you're going to the apartment complex, and then once you're inside, you'll have wayfinding signs for looking.
And that's something I think, I'm fine for stating. I'm gonna put a sign out.
And the address, here, there are specific requirements in the code, fire code, building code, everything, to have a certain amount, sizes, numbers, readily identifiable.
Fair enough, thank you, that is that explanation.
Yeah, parking fee.
As I've mentioned before, I think that, it's up to the borough to decide what the parking situation is gonna be like. And we heard testimony from a lot of residents, and some of them are in favor of some of the parking, some of them are not in favor of parking. So I think that, that the parking alongside the building on Hamilton, should leave, and any of the other parking should turn to, town council. Let them decide how they want to deal with that.
So you're saying the parking as currently identified on the site plan to stay,
Correct.
but the
Other question.
But the administration of those parking, how the borough council wants to do, who gets to park where, when, is up to borough
Not
council.
necessarily who, but.
Well,
Yes,
how is
yeah.
that?
Up to,
Right.
yeah, which it is ultimately anyway.
So I think that's the discussion right there, is the on-street parking as shown.
Right.
That's within your jurisdiction.
So is that a recommendation or is that in our resolution?
Well, it's part of the application. The question is there a change or is there something that you're proposing in connection with it? It doesn't sound.
Wait, does the current application denote that parking is restricted?
There's no restriction.
No, okay. So,
It's public parking in public street.
yeah,
People
okay,
cross.
and they're not using it for the parking a lot.
No.
They're allowed to, but they're not, they don't need it to meet the requirement
Okay,
under the
so
ordinance.
Right.
It's just street. It's basically, it's being painted, striped.
It's an improvement, it's an off-site improvement that's not dedicated to use events.
The street is being striped.
Well, when I
They're
say
gonna-
painted, right now, I think the parking on the streets that allow it, you just park, not like clean
Yeah.
designated areas, so that's really.
Just here.
Wait a minute. So,
Like by the municipal building, we have the
I
white
know,
stripe,
and
yeah.
on Cook Avenue, I
Yeah.
know. So it'll be that way. That's according to the plan.
Mhm.
I don't, that's clear.
Yeah, if you look at, I think it's exhibit A1 has like the kind of graphs in the location. I can look.
Speaking in the microphone, Chris, please.
Oh, I was just referring to exhibit A1.
It's hard on this, all but you can see where. So, you know. I think that's the, yep, so it kind of brings it there, it doesn't allow people to park, it doesn't allow people to park close to the intersection, it pushes them away at safe locations.
But can I just point to you that the townhome, pardon me, this is what I'm thinking for the townhomes assigned. And just to give you a visual.
That's that section.
They'll do it.
Okay, I've just pointed out the inhibitor, you want.
I had a question about Christopher, I had a question about how we're gonna word that bird strike thing.
The bird.
Yeah, the prevention of bird strikes, you know, like how it's determined whether it's too many or.
Yeah, well, I basically indicated, I just took the testimony, which was, that the. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's basically the applicant shall consider bird safety decals on specific windows where appropriate.
And they said the way that it was designed was also good for birds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
There are certain,
And you won't allow feeders.
what's the word I'm looking for, but certain sides of the building with certain exposures that require it more than others, you know, based on the lighting, where the lighting is and how it goes down, that, some of them are more susceptible for birds hitting. Those would be the areas that you would look for the applicant to focus on.
So is there anything else in the resolutions that we have to verify? So that we currently are, we have an amendment that allows for a four-way stop at Hamilton and Lafayette, right?
We're
But
recommending.
that's a rec.
That's a recommendation in Borough.
And so that's our only recommendation.
Well, we also, wait, are you talking about just recommendations to council?
Yeah,
At the
right, yeah.
intersection, we have other improvements.
Right, but as far as recommendations to
Yeah.
the council, that's the only.
That we've talked about so far. And that's through a process, warrant analysis process that we're asking the applicant to initiate with, our, consultants' inputs.
Let me summarize. Brad, did we talk about porches? Enough? I mean, does anybody else want to talk about porches and or chime in on that?
I think it's an important element. I think it's something that we can have impact on. It's a number, 12 there.
Carolyn, you had, back door.
Want to just do it one at a time?
Well, I mean, I just want to see if there's any more discussion about those before we go down everything else, because I'm not sure, I want to make sure that everybody's comments the board heard and has, whoever wanted to chime in, felt that they chimed in.
Well, Brad showed me, her diagram that she has of the floor plan. So I guess it doesn't make sense if the bedrooms are in the back to have a back door. And that's what I was trying to figure out. So again, I still think that assigned parking still will give a break to parents so they can get around back. It would be nice to have access. I don't know if that's a fire thing. They obviously say it's okay. I don't know about townhome living. So that's where I'm not sure. I just know that access will be difficult. They will park out front to avoid having to walk around back.
I think it's gonna be very difficult to do assigned parking, especially with the EV situation as well. What if I have assigned parking, but the assigned parking is an EV right there?
Well,
Now what do I
the parking behind the townhomes, that's where they'll probably try and park anyway, because the access to the apartments are really toward the northeast side of Yeah, I would just think that that would be for those second cars and,
I think generally they do not have time.
I think it's first come, first served, first time, first.
All of this.
And they have street parking and they have a cross street.
nobody can force it,
I know.
but it would just be like,
I need glasses.
okay, well, I don't
I think it's first come, first served.
agree to disagree.
Correct. That's my opinion, that's my opinion. I don't know if anyone else has a different.
And it was recommended by the other guy, that,
Andy, you do a great job.
other
Keep going.
The two things that break up the space is which was mentioned in ADA. So there are specific locations that have those that are required to be put, by code. So that kind of breaks it up. I don't have the numbers to see if there's enough for the townhouses or not, but again, that gets more into the operations. And once it's a condition, then it kind of bootstraps the ability to address issues or concerns or problems that develop as part of our operation. So unless there's a that, the board feels very strongly that this will improve the site in some area, having more flexibility to address conditions and issues without having to come before the board on a whole application to change a condition of approval, typically makes sense. So,
Agreed.
So then for the EV though, do you want to talk about that now?
well, the EV stations, they're required. There's a
But they
certain,
did extra, right? Or they like EV ready?
well, there's a requirement that you build certain number over time. You have to have EV ready, you've got to bring some online. I forget, I don't have the statute in front of me.
But there aren't fines if you park there.
So, well,
Leave them empty all the time.
well, enforcement's a separate issue, and that would be,
'Cause I don't, personally, I don't see them used where I've been going to, and I just wanted to but it may not be ready. I mean, I don't know.
that's a different, that's more of a legislative issue. Is the state requiring too many at this point, or,
Okay,
sooner?
that's, okay.
If they don't really leave it up at the discretion, like, it's hard because they say at year 2, you gotta have X amount up and running, and they may not be needed depending on that. So, but that's beyond what we can address here.
And just to confirm, we have the power to keep that place running without affecting those of us on the far reaches of the other side.
I mean, that's something that, part of construction, that they have to proceed and to get a connection to power company.
Okay. We finally have power in our area.
So that was another question. Will there be, individual backup generators allowed on property?
I thought there was testimony, wasn't there testimony on it? Oh, there was.
No, they have a, what they're proposing is a utility, location off of, Somerset, on the rear.
For a backup generator for the.
Transformer.
But no backup generator
No backup
on site.
generator was proposed, she's saying.
That's,
No, what I'm asking about is for the townhouse, individual backup generator.
No.
It's not individually owned. This is all run.
I'm just,
Yeah,
Parts of the whole.
it's not like you're
Development.
selling a
Yeah.
townhouse. It's part of the rental.
These are all rent.
rental.
yeah, okay, but some rental.
That won't soak.
The other, I have another question.
Hold on,
about-
Brad, so let's just address, there will be no backup generator on site. That's what, everyone's shaking their head, yes, that's correct.
It doesn't need to be one according to.
Or are you proposing one now, or?
Is it all right for my client to respond?
Yeah, you can respond just so we have clarity.
We just didn't address the issue at all.
Is there going to be a backup generator?
I just don't know. If we think it's called for, then we'll propose it and we'll,
And you can come back.
we can come back.
Okay.
The town can sustain. Overall.
Well, if
That's up to
the board
public
is
service.
concerned about backup generators, we could have a condition that says the applicant will come back before the board before adding.
No, I think what you're getting to is, does the power company have power to generate enough electricity
On a
to,
day-to-day basis.
and that's a utility issue, and they have to get, will serve letters, and that's not up to us.
I know we had that whole thing
That's
going on
definitely
the Carter.
Oh, no,
Rest
that's,
area.
yeah, that's the utility.
Yeah,
That's
so
That's on the
as
burden
long
that they
as-
have.
We don't.
Right. I have a question about the, did you get the hydrant flow calculations that satisfy?
We have not yet received that.
Because in your memo, it says,
And you need to.
We're talking about hydrant pressure capital.
Water.
because, in your memo, it says all issues must be fully resolved before granting final site plan approval. And you were concerned about the flow.
Correct. So one of the things that we look at is there enough water capacity, right, to extinguish a fire? One of the things that the applicant has done is, and in doing this, reduced it by increasing the level of protection that's provided. In principle, substantially reduced the amount of water that will be required to extinguish the fire.
Right.
The presumption is the sprinkler head activates 60, 70 gallons a minute, puts the fire out, and we don't need to bring, master strings and ladders, all that stuff.
Right.
So we still don't have that number. That number is based on what is currently in the ground, piping that's in the ground.
Right.
The water supply that's in the borough water system. That is yet to be determined. However, I think, the next thing, the development process,
Yes.
there has to be, resolution compliance,
Right.
right? So I will have to issue a memo at some point saying that they have satisfied all of our conditions.
Okay,
And yes, everything that we have asked for
Okay.
is now in the plan,
all right.
is now, ready to go, and that's even before the chair can sign off on the site plan. So that my comment of before final site plan,
Right.
it's before that signature
Ah.
happens. I can work on that. I can work on that wording a little better.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's before
I
that.
just, Yep. I'm a stick.
You want another?
I'm a stick.
You want another?
No.
Fine.
What were you suggesting?
Okay. Did I miss anybody? Jackie, I don't remember a comment. Mary Lou, I think you were outside agency approval. Peter was parking, Don was sign, Lou was. Bob, I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. And Lou was, what we're recommending the borough council. What else?
I do have a comment.
Yes.
And it has to do with the, school impact study.
Mhm.
I didn't see one. There was a slide deck, which, as I understand it, was done by the school district. But in that slide deck, it mentioned Hopewell 57 3 times, one of which was just cited on a map. And the other 2 times, it mentioned that there were gonna be 130 at that point, units, 20 for affordable. But there was no impact. There was no comments about the impact to busing, to, to school size, any of that kind of stuff. There was, so I don't know where that fits in exactly, except it was a condition, and I brought this up at
Because we're focused on the zoning ordinance.
Yes.
The
Hold on.
school impact study is, and studies like that are more relevant to the plan that gets ultimately developed. So you look at that stuff early on to determine the use and density of the site, and then you put it in the zoning ordinance. So it's not something that we would typically review because because the development standards have already been determined in terms of density. So, so if the school impact study says it's an impact of 1 or impact of 100, or it's horrible or it's great, it's really irrelevant to our decision here.
But it's not, if we're considering redevelopers, agreement. Because it says, and I said this in the very beginning.
Yeah.
That in addition to all the requirements, redevelopers shall provide a school impact study. Report must be prepared by a qualified professional with demography experience.
So it doesn't matter what the report says, what Brad's saying is, it doesn't matter what the impact report says, it's that it's required in order for approval.
Right.
And so I think the testimony was, they provided a narrative, but it just so happened that the Hopewell Valley School District their demographer was doing their report at the same time.
Yeah.
And was considering not only Hopewell 57, but also the impact of the redevelopment that's happening in our township.
Yeah.
And so those numbers were baked into their annual demography.
It's an analysis.
Yeah.
It's not an impact study. It does not discuss the specific characteristics of the proposed localized population and student data prepared by qualified blah, 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 blah. There was one page here. School impact. But it only said that there'd be 20 public school children.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an impact statement. That's the number.
Right.
That's no, the impact would be on busing, on school resources, on class size, on who goes to what school. You can't even know who goes. No, so we can know that it's where they had that. Well, how do you know that there are gonna be 20 people? Demography, but that's
high level, but to get down below that, and what plus they would be already quite difficult.
it may be difficult. All I'm doing is reading what the requirement was and saying that I don't see that. That's all I'm saying.
Anybody else on the board wanna weigh in on that? I mean, unless there's.
I don't know,
specific-
if we have it, we have it, we don't, we don't. I mean, I'm not,
Well,
I'm with,
I mean, this was the documents that were submitted to the, borough, I guess, on, one is the Local 57 supplementary report of emergency services, which was the other item. And then there was a Hopewell Valley Regional School District demographic analysis and enrollment projections update dated October 2025.
But isn't it impact statement that include class size, busing requirements, rooms, school? I mean, we heard from,
Can we move to accept what is there? That's all. That's what it's been saying. Okay, so that's what I would say. Yeah, I don't think it's reasonable. That's all. How would you? I can't possibly know what's close. The number.
well, if they're gonna be extra busing requirements, what, just, who's going to what school? Anticipated enrollment in the elementary, the middle. That's what I expected. Why would that be used? It doesn't have to help.
Can you speak into a microphone? Yeah, conversation happening, thank you.
Yeah, so Jackie, you're saying it would be useless to know those things.
Now, because
At this point, because there's.
Now at this point, but this, I brought this up at the very beginning.
but that doesn't matter.
No, no, no.
Point being is that you make an estimate.
Okay.
Okay, but and that estimate, we just said 320.
Right.
At that point, say what the demographic breakdown on them. And we should try to effort to try to say, one person from this bus and 3 over here, this one, we're just guessing.
Okay,
And then what would you, use that information for what you did?
all I'm saying.
No, I'm asking a question, what would you use that information for? You did that drill down, it's
Wires.
Budget.
To understand what the impact would be on our cost.
except we don't know that.
I understand, I understand. It's, in my mind, there was a requirement here that was not there.
Yeah, no, I think that's correct, but, to drill down further than that, it's.
Then it shouldn't have been in the contract.
I was just gonna say, I do think that the requirement was met because we're not asking for a specific delineated number of bit of information. I think the number is sufficient to what is required, because remember, we can't decide whether having more kids in schools is a relevant reason to include or deny an application. We can only decide based upon whether they have complied with the ordinance, which was created especially for them, by their attorneys. And which is the only, and nothing wrong with that. That's how the redevelopment process works in New Jersey, no shade, I mean, but the applicant and municipality created a law which currently exists and which they comply with, and which doesn't allow us to say too many kids, therefore.
No. I get, what I'm talking about goes back to what I'm saying goes back to my issue in the beginning, which is our
Developers agreement. That's what it goes back to. I don't see a school impact report.
Have you looked at demographic analysis?
I looked at all of those
Slides. Yeah. But.
Yeah, but. For regional breakdown.
Yeah. These developments, the redevelopment and roadway contract between the borough and the redevelopers. And, you know, some things, although the way it was drafted, I requested certain information. That information, in this particular case, is something that's relevant when you're looking at like densities and how many units per square feet, you know, something like that. At this point, all that has been decided. The question is, it's been codified in the zoning ordinance. So the question is, when the board looked at this material, as part, you know, I guess we can look at it as part of compliance, I mean, not compliance, as part of, you know, when they first initially submitted, if this was you know, enough information for us to make our decision. And the staff, when we went through the reports, determined that what was on record was sufficient. It wasn't identified as an area where we needed more information. And that's mostly because that information is not going to help our decision either way. And that's really what comes down to. You know, like we can't say, oh my God, there's going to be 1 million students tomorrow. So we have to reduce the density.
So and this school impact study should not have been in the developers agreement.
Or it should not
It
have
should say
said
how many
to the planning. Yeah.
are going to.
It was overstatement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we accept that as. We're going with.
Yeah, and the board could recognize that as fulfilling, as fulfilling the information requirement. It's the Hopewell Valley Regional School District demographic analysis and enrollment projections dated October 2025. And then there's also the Hopewell 57 supplemental report on emergency services. I don't think that has a date. That's where it's projected that it would produce 20 public school children and have 256 residents.
Questions, comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if there's anything else other, other issues to discuss, or,
I asked, I said,
okay, then it's your game,
do you want to go through the conditions again, or do you want to just go through any of the conditions we changed?
So,
See.
This is what I do on the board, I just walk back and forth, that's it.
You need a sign.
so some of the language that I went through will be tweaked a little, but from a substantive standpoint and the changes that we discussed today, I'll just go through. The first one, when we talked about revisions to the plan, we specifically referenced that they were going to show bike racks and their locations. When we talked about the stormwater management, I think we were going to make specific reference to the May 20th report and compliance with all those conditions.
The Boswell report.
Yes. There was some discussion on the rooftop activities. I don't think we're changing anything, but instead of, we could just recognize the applicant eliminated it, and in order to introduce rooftop activity, it would have to come back before the board on an amended application. I think that's how that would be. Yeah, and just so the public knows, that would also be something, if they come back an amended application, that would be something that would be noticed. We had some discussions, but no consensus on the porches. We had some discussion, but I think we pushed away from entries in the rear because of the layouts of the units.
So, you wanna just address the porch thing while we're sitting on it?
Sure.
Yeah, right, I'm not sure how to address that, either you push the house out and then there's a front yard issue, potentially, or you make the unit smaller.
Yeah, exactly. We were tasked by council. And if it's not voted on whether it puts a burden on the applicant or us or a professional, we're voting on whether it complies with the requirements. My whatever that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I understand.
Jen, can you please speak up? I can't hear you.
Oh,
She just said that they agree to disagree.
so, yeah, so there's disagreement on
Is there anyone else?
that. So consensus, I should say.
Front, the porch.
Right, the little yard in front is usable, right? I mean, that's what it looks like, but. Not a.
I don't know what it's
Not
that,
an-
it's a portico.
I mean, the applicant showed us pictures of porches, not pictures of porticos.
With the dimensions that were correct though, right?
Yeah, but they're only, and 16 of the unit. That have a for, I'm clearly, I'm finding it out real bad here. Yes, well, so I don't see mine.
Yeah.
I think Brett's on.
Yes, I think, okay.
I think you've been out there, I think you've been strong point out.
I understand.
The next change to the language that I suggested, substantive, is that, we're gonna ask the applicant the borough arborists to review and determine health. After construction, there will be another review to determine if any of the trees are damaged or look like there's, they're not gonna survive. And those trees will be replaced by the applicant. And I already said street trees and tree replacement trees shall be reviewed and approved by the board's planner and engineer at that point. We added the construction safety protocols as a condition. I think I had that in there, but I think I had it as an issue to. At least the board was to have concessions to do that as a condition. Sidewalks, sidewalks. Yeah, the other one was.
Recording and broadcast.
Yeah, it took out for like 5 seconds.
That's the Zoom, not the.
That's the Zoom.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
We don't do that only for the, okay, so there's no.
I amended the affordable housing language to include that the applicant shall comply with what was a newly adopted affordable housing ordinance by the borough. So the affordable housing ordinance and the provision previously cited to the state regulations having them require, comply with all those such as the UHAC, Uniform Housing Affordability Controls. That was already in there. I don't think we had a specific condition related to possible generators. There's none shown on the plan. Applicant wants to bring it, they'll bring it back and then she'll take it out. The next one was the hydrant flow calculation. We can work that into one of the paragraphs of the report that even though they need to get review and approval of the fire marshal, we can just specify to that they'll have that, provide that information on water capacity. That's part of the requirements.
As far as fire, but if I may, is there an opportunity to recommend to town council to think about emergency evacuation safety. Now, not only, which we quickly talked about, is there a plan for mass evacuation for wildfires, for flooding, for the existing town? And then if there is this whole new unit of people, how are they going to get out? Is that something we can extend to town council to start considering for the future?
I mean, Andy might be able
Your
to
future.
talk about that, but we have OEM that does those things
Exactly.
for the whole state.
Yeah.
For every municipality has to have that.
So you have a local OEM.
But
Yeah.
not even for our local, how will we, okay.
The local OEM, Office of Emergency Management,
Okay.
right, would develop those plans, they have plans. Specifically what they are, I couldn't speak to. You know, when to evacuate, who to evacuate, where to go, things like
Okay.
that.
So
Shelter.
we don't need to worry, okay,
Should not have.
very good, thank you.
But that is an OEM function, not a fire
Oh,
department.
yeah, thank you.
And in terms of outside agencies, I did add Hopewell Township Fire Marshal and corrected New Jersey American Water for success. I think that's all that we talked about in terms of substantive modifications to the language that I suggested.
Thank you, Christopher. I think you have mostly summed up the things that were needed to be reviewed for my perspective. And I just wanted to say, really for the members of the public, that I think this whole process should have had a better education and explanation to the public during the hearings when this ordinance first came about. Suggestions that members of the public would have the power to demand changes to the application, or even that we would during our planning board hearings, was unhelpful and inaccurate. The applicant has agreed to tweak some things on your recommendation and on our recommendation, that was purely voluntary, and that should have been made known to the public before we got anywhere into this process. I do think that redevelopment would be a net positive for the borough, but I think in the future, and I'd like to suggest this to the board, to our professionals and to the council, that before redevelopment takes place in other ways, races like historical property, we undertake some educational outreach to citizens about the way the system works and does not work when we're using the redevelopment program. Having said that, I think based on our review of this application, the developer has indeed complied with the ordinance as passed, and therefore, even though I'm not enjoying this one bit, I will move to approval with all conditions previously stated.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Donaldson,
Yes.
Ms. Lyon,
No.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Hey.
Mr. Young,
Abstain.
Ms. Coella,
Me? Yes.
Yes.
Right. So, the next step is that I will put together a resolution that outlines the findings of fact, inclusion of law, and at the end, it will have the conditions, and that I will get put together. Circulated to the board prior to the next year. The next year.
We are meeting on July 1st.
This doesn't get carried, but it'll show up on the agenda.
Yeah, oh,
July 1st.
July 1. At Borough Hall. All right, just for anything else on this? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I gotta open the phone. So at this point, I would like to open the floor to the public for any items that were not on tonight's agenda. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the floor.
in order.
We have any other business? Yes,
Go ahead.
got a second? All in favor? Aye. Staying? Check.
Um,